Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany. And it was an illness that led to his death. Have you ever stopped to wonder about that illness? The temptation is to rush past the opening line of the text because we want to get to the miraculous raising of Lazarus from his grave. But what was it that killed Lazarus? Did he step on a nail and die of an infection? Or maybe there had been a cholera epidemic that had swept through the town, an epidemic that took the life of Lazarus with it. There's an epidemic, actually a pandemic, that has been taking the lives of hundreds of people annually for many years now. This year, 355 transgender people were reported as victims of that pandemic. 76% due to violence and 13% due to suicide. The most deaths were reported in Brazil, 99 people, or more than 1/4 of the total deaths in the world. The U.S. took second place with 57 deaths. The two countries combined account for almost 1/2 of the total number of reported transgender deaths due to anti-transgender violence. Many more went unreported. Around the sanctuary are memorial cards of the U.S. transgender siblings who have been lost over the past year. There wasn't enough space to include a card for people from every country. So you won't see a card for 24-year-old Neela from Bangladesh, who was stabbed in the throat by two youths, one of them only 14 years old, on a footbridge on September 22nd. Nor will you find a card for 26-year-old Ignacia Palma from Chile. After being attacked in the streets, Ignacia was stabbed and burned alive. She was found alive by firefighters who took her to a hospital where she died minutes later due to burns that covered her entire body. And you won't find a card for 10-year-old Alex Bastien from Quebec, Canada. 10 years old. Alex died by suicide after struggling with the effects of a precocious puberty, which was changing his body in ways he had expressed he did not want. Although he was supported by his parents, he had also suffered conflicts and bullying at school. The pandemic is taking hundreds of precious lives every year. And if you're like me, you're feeling overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, it's easy to become immobile because the problem is huge. It's not just a problem of violence against transgender and gender nonconforming people. As transgender priest Shannon Cairns says, the problem goes deeper than that. It's a problem of misogyny and racism and poverty, and it's how all those things intersect. In our gospel text, in response to Jesus' delayed arrival, Martha and Mary blame Jesus for taking so long to reach them. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, they say. And when Jesus says your brother will rise again, talk of a future resurrection isn't helpful for Mary and Martha. They are grieving now. and so are we. We are grieving now. We are maybe overwhelmed, maybe outraged, maybe angry at the silence of God or the inaction of God. Or maybe we are overwhelmed with our own ignorance, how much we don't know about transgender lives, how much we don't know about the ways that racism and misogyny and poverty intersect. Maybe we are overwhelmed at how to deal with our own privilege in the world, overwhelmed with our collaboration in systems and structures of violence and oppression. Maybe we are grieving the loss of people we know. Cairns reminds us that there can be a tendency to rush past our hard feelings, to rush toward redemption or comfort or resurrection. But for the next bit, we need to sit with the hard stuff. We need to sit with our complicity and ignorance and grief and pain. We need to be overwhelmed. Eventually, Jesus made his way to the grave and commanded the people to roll away the stone that blocked the grave. And then he told them to unbind Lazarus. The miracle wasn't just Jesus calling Lazarus out. It was a communal event. Everyone participated in the event by rolling away the stone and by unbinding Lazarus. We are also commanded to join together in action. Cairns writes, "We must roll away the stone that prevents people from having access to proper medical care, to safe jobs where they can work with dignity, to safe places to live. We must roll away the stones of racism and misogyny and transphobia. We must roll away our own complicity in systems that keep people oppressed. And we must unbind people. We must unbind the messages that say transgender women are less than. We must unbind the media that makes transgender lives a joke. We must unbind the stories that say some people are more worthy of love and respect and life than others." And he concludes by saying, "We are certainly a people of resurrection, but that doesn't mean that we sit around and wait for it. No, we must work for it. We must work for a world where people are valued. We must work for a world in which there are no longer systems that oppress. We must work for a world that tears down white privilege and misogynistic systems so that women of color can be free. We must do this work. Our faith demands it of us. Our humanity demands it of us." I'm grateful for the words and wisdom of Father Cairns. He reminds me that as a white cisgender male, I live in a place of power and privilege. And when I don't use my power and privilege to speak out and dismantle systems of oppression, then I am part of the problem. But when I use my power and privilege in such a way that calls out anti-transgender violence, then I believe I'm living in such a way that is aligned with God's will for the world. As followers of the living Christ, we are sometimes known as people of the resurrection. So let us believe in the resurrection of the body and let us work for it as well. Amen.